Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. Prepare to experience the strongest studio gym where excuses never apply. It's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
I swear I'm a chimpanzee because whenever I see my face, I smile at myself like a chimpanzee would. Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We have a great show planned for you today. You know, I banged this drum often on the show because it's imperative that people understand this. They just don't. Your immune system is, we're talking a lot about immune systems these days, right? Everybody's talking about immunity, immune systems, and all that sort of stuff. But what they fail to make the connection at is that your immune system is your gut. 80% of your immune system is in your gut. And your immune system is why you can eat a piece of beef and don't die of like some sort of toxic poisoning, because your immune system protects you against the things that it knows that it has to protect you against. And that's from an evolutionary perspective. It takes millennia for this to evolve. And I remember about 6 or 7 years ago, AARP did a study of their members. And they polled to see who had bloating, who had GI issues, digestive issues, who had GERD. And they discovered that 60% of their respondents suffered with some sort of digestion issue. And it wasn't just periodically, it was like year round. They always have something. They're always bloated. They have bad indigestion all the time. And, you know, when we say this, people they think that GI issues are just, you know, oh, like Larry the Cable Guy, when food you don't like, doesn't like it. When food you like doesn't like you, take Nexium. That was his answer. Big mistake. Big mistake. We found that there's proton pumps in the brain, in the heart, and they're acted on by those drugs as well. Bad news. But people think it's no big deal when their gut is bothering them. It is. It's a sign that your immune system is effed up. And you're never going to be as healthy as you can be until you address your gut. Joel Green is turning the diet world on its ear today because of his book, The Immunity Code. And no one believes that it's a book about weight loss, but because why does it have the word immune? Because even your body fat content, your ability to build muscle easily, is all affected by your gut. Your gut. So we're going to be talking more about the gut, the microbiome, the foods that seem to help and harm it, but also the fact that you can actually be immunized by food that you eat. And we're not talking about anything particular, but immunization means the immune system is stepping up for a task. And that can be affected directly by the foods you eat. Before we go any further, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods, makers of the tasty pastry. It's the Pop-Tart reimagined. Less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high-quality protein, 4 to 5 net carbs. But you'll eat them because they taste delicious. In fact, your children will eat them. They're so good. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. use the coupon code SHR10 to save and let them know that you learned about them here on Superhuman Radio. And now my returning guest is Donna Gates. How you doing, Donna?
I'm great, Carl. Really, really happy to be back here this time because I think this is a very, very important show. I hope it's going to change people's lives for the better.
Yeah, I it's amazing. People go to the doctor and the doctor wants to treat your symptom. And your symptom could be a rash. Your symptom could be
Headache.
a headache. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another one I've discovered. We have a lot of people going around with dry eye today. I'm convinced that people who suffer from silent GERD, where the gut is constantly letting gases out up into the esophagus, into the face, into the skull, into the sinuses, they're getting dry eye, not because of something directly because of the eye, but because these gases are coming up and making their way into the optic cavity and irritating the eyes. People aren't thinking about this at all.
That I've never seen anything about, but I know it's easy. Like if my eyes starting getting dry, I just add fish oil and borage seed oil, and that day it's not dry anymore.
Right,
so that's an easy way.
So you told me an interesting fact about infections. We're just going to use the word infections today, okay? Everybody can apply it however they want. But you told me an interesting fact that populations that consume fermented foods with regularity seem to be resistant to a lot of these new infections that we're dealing with today.
Totally. There's tons of research on it. Sometimes people think that, fermented foods, for example, are this new thing. They have been around since since the beginning of time, things fermented. And I have this gigantic book right here full of research. So, of course, there's so much research because fermented foods are a big business. People make a lot of money on fermented foods, and then they have to have the science to prove it. But what I'd love to do is to help people understand when immunity starts, like at birth, what's actually happening. Because, I just had a grandson born 3 days ago and watched the whole thing on camera and all, and everybody's happy he's, healthy and has all his fingers and toes and all that. But nobody thinks about this. So he was born in a hospital. There's tons of germs all around and people were touching him and everything like crazy. His mother, though, ate a lot of fermented vegetables through the whole pregnancy. So so he was fortunately slipped through the birth canal and he's already got good bacteria inoculated him. But here's what nature does. We come through the birth canal and we're inoculated with beneficial bacteria. If the mother has healthy bacteria in her gut, it's going to go into the birth canal. And then right away, at the same time, after it comes into the world, the baby is the mother producing colostrum. And the baby starts sucking right away. And this colostrum is extremely important. Babies are born with a leaky gut, so the colostrum can get in. It's full of immune factors that the baby needs to have and antioxidants and all. And then it seals the gut, but some of it goes into the bloodstream and that begins to build muscle, which, like you just said, is part of the immune system. And then 3 days later, the milk comes in, and the milk is loaded with human milk sugars that are now beginning to feed this very important bacteria called bifidus.
Right.
Bifidus infantis is the predominant one initially, and then all these other bifidus come in to the picture. And then in about 6 weeks, or certainly by the time the baby eats, the microbiome starts changing. But this is our immune system. This is how we can live in the world. And I hate it when I see somebody's put their 2-week-old baby, they brought them to the shopping center or something, but because they don't really have an immune system yet.
Right.
They don't really have a great one until they're at least 3 months, ideally a year. But so lots of times babies are born with colic. And that's 100% sign that inner ecosystem, that microbiome, is not forming properly. What our moms do is they take a little bit of that juice from the fermented vegetables, dilute it, put it in a dropper, squirt it in the baby's cheek. That's the end of colic. They start having this amazing, healthy digestive system and immune system. But of course, you can't see immunity, but you can see that as the baby develops, they're extremely happy kids. They actually talk at an amazingly early age very clearly. Like by 2 years old, you can understand everything they say. So the brain, the gut-brain connection right there is really important. They don't get sick. And so the reason this is so important is that we have not honored nature's way of doing this. We act like nature doesn't know what she's doing. And yet if we copied nature, so you're not going to get that maybe from pharmaceutical companies, but you can certainly do it yourself at home. And then initially, after this inner ecosystem gets started, it's up to us to take over and keep that bacteria, healthy bacteria, growing in the gut. That's where your fermented foods come in. And they're not all of them are the same. Some are way more beneficial than others, but it's our responsibility from that point on to maintain that inner ecosystem that nature set up. That's your immune system. And I have so much research I've collected over the years. For example, people that got the virus that were eating fermented foods in countries like that, like Korea, for example, or many of Poland, Russia, they didn't have a big issue with the virus. And then and also, if they got vaccinated, they had a great vaccine response. So, this applies to anytime you're vaccinated. You want to have these bacteria in your gut, making sure that the response to the shot is a positive one. So,
So I want two things I want to add to that. Number one, when you realize that the milk oligosaccharides in human breast milk are not for the baby, but for the microbes that it's carried. So it's so important to sustaining life that breast milk has food for the microbes, for the bifido. It has food in it because it wants them to stay alive until the baby can interact with them. That's why there's oligosaccharides in breast milk. It's not for the baby. The baby doesn't get it. The microbes do, number one.
Yeah, that's right. And this is important too, is those microbes are now going to educate the immune system. Mm-hmm. They say, okay, this immune system, these are enemies. This is what they look like. Get rid of them. And these are friends. So we're going to leave them alone. We like them, present. That's critical. That education of the immune system that happens from the beginning of life is really critical too. So the more you're feeding the bifidus in the beginning with those human milk sugars, you can actually buy human milk sugars now, HMOs. And every morning I make myself a shake with this really good raw whey protein from A2 cows, Jersey cows. Right. In it, I put colostrum, human milk sugars, bifidus, because we sell a really good bifidus product. And sometimes I put collagen in it, but I'm trying to duplicate exactly what nature did at birth, and it's a great thing to do. It takes time.
One other thing I wanted to mention before I forget it, there was a study that we covered on this show, and I forget if it was Alex Leaf, but in African Americans, they have a poorer vaccine response, whether it's the flu vaccine or even the childhood vaccines. And it was linked directly to compromised immune system. And that was linked directly to gut problems. So even the effectiveness of a given vaccine depends on your gut. Because if your gut's not functioning properly, meaning your immune system's not functioning properly, then that vaccine is not going to elicit the desired response. And we've known this for a very long time. This isn't new stuff. That, like I said, that one study we talked about, I think it was Alex Leaf that came on probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, where we talked about that. We have a question from JG. Let's get this up here. Okay, so how about with the infants receiving the big pharma vaccinations that they give at the beginning of life? They have aluminum, MSG, other factors. Yeah, sometimes they have monkey kidney in them. They have peanuts in them. And I had a scientist on a long time ago from the UK that showed that peanut allergies are being driven by childhood vaccines.
Oh my gosh, there's so much information on this too, and I know it's just,
we have to be
tread
cautious.
carefully here before you're banned again. But so you don't have to get those, by the way. My son just had a baby. He and his wife, they had a baby 3 days ago, and they went so he inhaled meconium, so they put him in the NICU to dry out his lungs. But they made it real clear when they followed him right in there that do not give our child any Hep B, because they immediately give them a thing called Hep B, and it starts this amazing number by the time they're 2 years old, amazing number of shots. So that's what I'm trying to point out. So very important. There's an alternative to that the pharmaceutical companies, they want to make money. They're not going to tell you this, but if you know this, and it's absolutely a fact, it's what nature does, we wouldn't be here alive. Humans, animals, we wouldn't be on the planet if even flies have an inner ecosystem. Every living organism has its own inner ecosystem. So we wouldn't be alive if we didn't have this process occurring. If we could just begin to trust nature and trust this process, you'd say no to those jabs.
Well, and the idea of not trusting it is just ridiculous, and I'll tell you why. If our immune system was not capable of managing the exposure that we have to various infections, we would have died a long time. We would have been gone. Look, the Black Plague in 1300s. Thank you, China, because they gave us that one too. They gave us avian flu. All the great infections come from China. Quite frankly, I think we should sequester them from the rest of the world and not allow them to travel anywhere. But that's just my inane attitude about it. But 200 million people died from the Black Plague in the 1300s. Think about this. Not everybody died from it. 200 million died, but there were people who were resistant to it. They got exposed to it. They didn't die. That's an example of the evolution of an immune system. So this is nonsense that we need modern medicine to save us. I mean, okay, there are things like infection and penicillin. Yes, very valuable. But by and large, the human condition, it can cope with a myriad of things.
But you can be sure 1300 years, in that period of time, the sanitation was not good. And we have that going for us today. You got to give credit, a lot of credit for that. We wash our hands. We have all kinds of things to treat ourselves. This time, they didn't have that. So that's great that so many people survived, given that they had poor sanitation. So it's just getting educated. And then, like, for example, I believe in this, of course. I have a ton of understanding, scientific understanding why it works, but I still haven't gotten the virus yet. I'm waiting to get it because I'm thinking, okay, I'll just build natural immunity. I'll probably have a very good response to it, not get really particularly sick. But I've been around lots of people and with it, and nothing ever happens to me. I know a lot of people that also are in the same boat. My assistant, for example, for 17 years, her whole entire family had it, but she eats fermented vegetables. So, you can prove it to yourself that you're going to have a really strong immune system by eating the right fermented foods.
When I worked, I think I may have shared this show before. I know I've shared it before when we've talked about the gut and microbes. The reason that your immune system is different than your siblings is because it's not just the fact that whether you delivered vaginally or C-section plays a role, whether or not you were breastfed or not, because about 70% of the microbes delivered to the nursing baby, come directly from the skin, the areola of the mother, not just the milk. So it's not just that, were you breastfed, were you not? How long were you breastfed? And then did they switch to the bottle? All these things. But more importantly, your personality carved your world, your environment. When I was a kid, this is disgusting, but I have to tell it. When I was a kid, I used to pick up cockroaches and put them in my pocket because I called them my friends. My grandmother she couldn't speak English. She only spoke Italian. And she would say something to me in Italian and slap them out of my hand. I go, no, that's Joey. And I'd pick this is amusing and probably shows early signs of the distortion of my personality and brain. But I touched those things. I probably ate and didn't wash my hands. Everybody is unique because of what we come in contact with on top of everything else. And so no two immune systems are the same. That's a fact. But more importantly, you have to remember that your immune system is capable of it's malleable. It's capable of changing. You can change the landscape of your immune system. If you're one of these people that is always sick, then chances are you don't have a robust immune system. When I was in high school, I dropped out of high school. I went to work at the racetrack. My hands were always filthy. I was handling horse manure. I was handling horses. I was napping in the afternoon in a tack room, and I ate with those filthy hands. I never was sick when I worked on the racetrack. Not at all. I don't remember having a cold. I showed up for work every day. I really believe that the exposure to those large animals and that environment made my immune system more robust.
And there's research that totally supports that. So we need to get that information out. Now, people have fermented foods way, way, way from the beginning of time because they fermented meat, for example. You can leave milk out and overnight, and it will ferment into what's called clabbered milk. So you couldn't help but ferment your food because they didn't have refrigeration. The fermented vegetables are survival foods. They are now, in my opinion, they're definitely survival foods. You can take one head of cabbage and shred it up and pack it in a jar. Actually, I brought one. This one, it's like a week old. I'm going to start eating it. But to me, it looks absolutely delicious. It's cabbage, carrots, garlic, and ginger. And this particular one has a lot of ginger.
I got to make it this weekend. We did a whole show on this. If you search the catalog, it was probably a month or so ago, about fermenting your own foods. It's so simple that it's ridiculous that we go out and buy stuff. Think about it on YouTube said sauerkraut. Yes, I like sauerkraut, but I'm going to make my own. And you have the starter. So you have the starter kit on your website. Let me put the website this for a second.
Here's the starter culture, but here's something really important I want to share with you about that, because so I always wondered if I add the starter, I want proof that it's worthwhile doing that. It's super easy. You just literally add it. But anyway, so I sent it to different jars at the University of Nebraska, and 3 of them didn't have a starter, and 3 of them did. And so they tested it. And here's what came back from their results. The jars that didn't have a starter, they had 58,000 CFUs. It's a tiny amount. CFUs, 58,000 per gram. That's a tiny amount, gram. Okay. But when you added the starter, it had 1,800,000 per gram. So 58,000 plus 1,800,000. And then, okay, that sounds impressive. But those you end up with a ton of lactobacillus, and they're super microbes. Besides producing folate, and they resist they're very resistant to antibiotics, which is why with the little baby, if they gave them an antibiotic, we weren't worried about that if they had to give it to them. But because it's just going to bounce right back. The lactobacillus isn't going to die. It's very antiviral, by the way, and it's such a leader that all the other bacteria line up and follow what Lactobacillus plantarum says to do. And even though there are many other microbes, they're not all plantarum. They're growing more. All the other ones are growing more too, because they're getting great orders from the general. So there are many, many things about using a starter that's really beneficial.
Let me put this up here. So what I'm asking my audience to do is go to shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco, BODYECO. There are so many great products there, but if you don't get anything else, get the starter kit that we're talking about to make your own fermented foods, and try it. And do it with the kids. Cut up your cabbage, cut up your garlic, cut up your carrots, cut up all the stuff. Put it in there. Some ginger. Yeah, ginger's magic. Ginger is magic for cancer too, by the way. And let it sit. Follow the directions, and you will be in heaven. And you will never ever buy bottled, jarred, or canned sauerkraut or anything else ever again. You get 20% off by using the code SHR20 on everything site-wide. Shop around. This is the stuff that we always hear about. Oh, those people who live to be 100, 120 years old, they eat fermented foods, they eat kefir. This is it right here. And it's within arm's reach to get it. shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco. Use the code SHR20 to save 20% off. One question.
The other day, somebody asked me, why is my skin good? Because I'm 75. I don't really have wrinkles. I'm positive this is why, because I found these 30 years ago. I'm the first person to ever teach about them and the benefits and everything and how to make them many years ago. So obviously I ate them myself. But I kind of surprised myself. Like I look at other people 75 and they don't have the same skin. So, there's really a lot of research on the gut skin connection, but, the gut vagus nerve, gut brain. So the vagus nerve, literally all these different organs, the vagus nerve goes up to every single important organ in the body, up to the brain. So there's so many more benefits than we can even imagine. I mean, it's even hard for us to imagine that something so simple can make a profound difference in your life too. And I was just getting some more my notes, but so people drink alcohol, right? It's pretty popular. Back in the day, people drank a lot of alcohol because the water was contaminated. That was a healthier thing for them. But Lactobacillus plantarum prevents alcohol-induced disruption of the lining of the gut. So you don't get
That's
it's a big deal. I have so many studies. They're pretty fascinating. So if you're going to drink, then for sure, make sure you're eating these too.
So do you want to immunize your gut before drinking or after drinking or both? You take some
bacteria are so incredibly hardy that they're not destroyed by the alcohol. I mean, you don't want to drink like all the time, but becoming one of the things about our probiotic liquids that's very cool, they're great mixers. Like around the holidays, I advise people, take your tequila or your vodka or whatever and put in a glass and then put in some of the probiotic liquids and you'll, relax and feel really good and have a good time at the party, but you don't end up drunk and you can go home and you won't be stopped by the police on the way home for being drunk. So the bacteria are in there negating the acetaldehyde that the alcohol is making. Mm-hmm. Now, some drinks like beer, wine, kombucha, they have a lot of wild fermentation. A lot of so people that are sensitive to histamine or on a low histamine diet, they're not going to do well on those. But again, the plantarum actually degrades histamine. So I see this myth all the time. Don't eat fermented foods if you have a histamine problem. Well, they're all different. So you make it with the Lactobacillus plantarum, which is going to degrade the histamine. That's the bacteria you do want to eat because it's going to help correct your gut. Ultimately, a histamine reaction like that is a gut problem. So if you get to the real source of the problem, heal the gut, get that microbiome going and everything, then you won't have this overproduction of histamine. So again, I've been doing this for 30 years, so obviously I've stumbled upon really good information, but it upsets me when people put out things like one well-known gut person, microbiologist, he says, oh, they don't make it down into the gut. Well, of course they make it in the gut, because how can they do all these studies and find them in the gut if they're not down in the gut? And
not only do they make it into the gut, but a lot of times some of them come out in your bowel movement, so you can see they're there.
Most of them actually are in the stool, but and they're protecting the gut lining too, which is super important. And some will colonize the gut and get into that mucus layer down there and stay there. So there's research on that. You can't make a statement like that without verifying it. The research proves that that's a wrong statement too. So unfortunately here's another thing, they are very sour. So I had somebody tell me yesterday, oh, you gave me a jar, I ate a couple of spoonfuls, but they're sour. Well, one thing you can do is, this is like a worker who came to my help to help me fix something, but he was really into health. So I gave him a jar, but he didn't the next time he came back, wasn't going to eat them. So if you just put a good oil, like olive oil, avocado oil, pumpkin seed oil, really a good one, into it, and you mix it all up. A salad dressing is made from something sour like vinegar or lemons.
Yeah.
Add the oil and a little bit of salt. You have salt in them when you make them, but not a whole lot. But anyway, it's some salt, and they don't taste sour anymore. I'm just going to make some deviled eggs later on today, and I'm going to be sure to put some in the deviled egg, the yolk mixture.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Instead of pickle relish, you know what I mean? Everybody puts pickle relish. Use that instead. That's smart.
It's delicious tasting. And then so there's lots of ways you can work them into your diet. And if you've got children like babies, you just can take the juice and dilute it and squirt it in their mouth and start them off right. They need more of the bifidus initially in the beginning, but we have Ecology babies that are. One thing about all of them, 100% certainty, is they're happy kids and not depressed or anything, real positive. So positive people draw good stuff to you. So they have an amazing, their life is quite blessed in many ways, and their parents love them because they're so easy to raise. I mean, a child that's not fussy, that's not depressed, that's not having temper tantrums is a much easier child to raise. So they're right at the beginning of the life, they just have a better life, basically.
I want to take a commercial break. When we come back, I want to pick something up about clobber and fermented milk, and then we'll talk more and we'll take more questions from the audience. You're watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. We're talking with Donna Gates today. There's nothing better for you than fermented foods. I mean, this is thousands and thousands of years we've known about it, but we've gotten away from it. And I'll tell you something else. You buy sauerkraut and it has sodium benzoate in it, it's got no living microbes in it. Sodium benzoate is a preservative that they use in pickles and sauerkraut. And it's designed to kill pathogens, which are the bad microbes. But guess what? It kills the good microbes too at the same time. So don't think that I eat a lot of sauerkraut. Every day I eat sauerkraut. Look on the jar. See if there's a preservative in there. If there's a preservative in there, there's no microbes in there. So don't be fooled. Make it yourself. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. Are you suffering from signs of an unhappy gut? Diversity is the key to healthy, robust inner ecosystem. Body Ecology probiotic liquids are made by fermenting organic seeds, biodynamic brown rice, and chickpeas together to create a diverse culture found nowhere else on earth. It's the secret to restoring your gut's microbiome for a healthier digestive tract, improved immune function, and longevity. Take 20% off by visiting the website shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco, shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco, that's BODYECO, and using the code SHR20. Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free. This plant-based elixir combines a variety of different effective compounds, all from raw plant materials that at different doses provide you with completely different experiences. A third of a bottle puts you in the zone and makes you very focused and is ideal for a non-stimulating pre-workout. It also has a mild analgesic effect for us older lifters who have soreness and little pains and aches that keep us from training as ferociously as we want. A half a bottle will create a mild euphoric effect that will allow you to forego consuming alcohol but still be socially lubricated and have fun. I have never had a product deliver on its name the way Botanic Tonics Feel Free does, and I won't ever be without it, and you shouldn't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feel free and use the code SHR40 for 40% off your first order. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Welcome back. We're talking with Donna Gates. We're talking about your gut, your immune system. Don't be fooled. You know, there was was it the Spanish flu of 1918? Lasted through 1919. It went through our population. Some people died. The large majority of people lived and developed robust immune systems that responded to it. And as such, we never needed a vaccine for the Spanish flu. Our bodies just got stronger. And don't think that that doesn't happen rudimentary as a normal response to an infection. Don't be fooled. Look, we can't save everybody. I mean, we don't want to save everybody. Look, I mean, there are people that are dying out there that society feels like, well, that's okay. But the reality is we can't save everybody. This idea that that the equality of outcomes is guaranteed to us in life, it's not. And so sometimes we have to cull the herd, and it's mean, it's sad. I may be one of those people who dies because of the herd culling. But it's necessary for the greater good, not to try to intervene and derail the development of our immune system, because we need our immune system to keep getting stronger and being prepared for the things that are happening in our lives today, bottom line. Let's talk about Clabber. So I used to make it, but I made it with raw milk, and I was under the impression that you can't use anything but raw milk because raw milk has those microbes in it, right?
Right, you can't. If it's been pasteurized, it's not going to ferment. You have to put a starter in it. I'm a big fan of, I insist on it actually, that they use an A2 milk. So it could be goat milk or sheep milk, but you can buy A2 milk today, and it is pasteurized. I mean, you can buy it from farmers and all. If it says it's from a Jersey cow, it's A2. If it's from a goat or a sheep or a human being, it's an A2 milk. So that's important because it's way easier to digest. But if it's been pasteurized, because let's say you're going to go to the store and buy pasteurized A2 milk and you ferment it, you've just undone a lot of the damage that pasteurization does. So that's a great benefit. Another thing is if there are toxins, especially like in the vegetables, let's say you can't afford organic vegetables and you have to get, there's not much available, and you have to get vegetables, are grown with pesticides, glyphosate, whatever. When you ferment them, the microbes get rid of all the toxins in them too. So that's important. We have food shortages that are potentially coming. At the very, very least, if you grew ahead of some cabbage, which is pretty easy to grow, some carrots or whatever, and you ferment that, you'll last through the whatever. But because people did that, they had when they had no, it was cold, they didn't have any food, they weren't growing anything, but they fermented in the fall their vegetables, and they made it through the winter. And when I was in China years ago, so I was with a guide, a tour person. I mean, he was a translator, and so we go to this town, and all these giant trucks are coming in, like huge trucks, all loaded with cabbage, and they dumped them in the square. And then I saw all these women coming with their different container kind of things, and they load up the cabbage and go away. So I said, what are they doing? And he said, oh, they're taking them back to ferment because they weren't going to have any winter food for the winter. And so they're very high in vitamin C, so that's going to protect you. The fiber is amazing. We always say eat more fiber. So therefore they're producing short chain fatty acids. They do protect the gut lining. I was just looking at my notes here. So they're just, who would not eat them if you don't want to make them? Every health food store has 4 or 5 brands now, which years ago when I started teaching people, your only choice was to make them. But again, if you'll take the time to make them, you get all this extra benefits of and you put it in the starter.
I remember they called it the canning season, but a lot of people use ball jars jars covered with wax. But this was commonplace, and then they would store them in their cold cellar, and they'd eat on them all year, all winter long. They'd have
they lasted without refrigeration. Now, everybody's talking about the long haulers, and you had a great show yesterday on that. But so one of the things too that there is no research. Like, it'd be nice if your guest yesterday would do this, but if people are long haulers, or if they don't want to become a long hauler, the first thing that the virus does is it infects the gut. And they know now, they have enough studies to show that the virus wakes up all these latent viruses, Epstein-Barr, herpes, and so on. The brain is infected. That spike protein is still in the body. As a matter of fact, when the macrophages actually go to gobble it up, they're not strong enough to kill it. So it's actually remaining inside those macrophages, inside tissue. So all that stuff is going on. But think about this. The fermented vegetables are incredibly anti-inflammatory. So let's say you've been eating them and the virus enters and tries to get a hold of your gut to cause all those other problems. It can't, because it's going to immediately quell that inflammation that the virus is going to take. So the current virus we've been all aware of, and it's got us scared to death, so they can control us, in my opinion. Fear is a great way to control people. You don't have to, with the right kind of knowledge, you don't have to be afraid. Like, I was never scared. Anything I heard on the news, I just so angry that they weren't telling us this, too. So, yeah,
I know. This has been a learning lesson. This surviving through this period of time, the past 2.5 years, has really opened a lot of people's eyes. That's all I'm going to say. So is there any extra value to kimchi because it's spicy? Sean Wasson commented that kimchi is his favorite.
No, that's great. If you're a spicy person, that's a great thing to go with, and you can buy that, you can make it. The thing about it is when people put spices like that in their fermented foods, it also had the protection against bacteria and parasites. So, but the other day I don't know, for some reason I got into watching these Korean shows on Netflix.
Yeah.
And they always have food. People are always eating on these different episodes. And then I noticed what they were doing is they always had the rice, and then they have like a bowl of kimchi there. And what they do is they take the kimchi, put it on top of the rice, and eat a scoop or so. Take some more kimchi, put it on top of the rice, and eat some more. And, I thought, see, that's proof. Like, everybody is against grains today. And some people, like I'm one of them, I need some grains to help me produce GABA, to help me be more calm, I sleep better. But I eat the fermented foods. I know how to prepare the grains properly with a lot of water and vegetables, and so I don't have any problem with them, but I'm eating the fermented vegetables. They're going to eat up the carbs. And that's why people in Korea are so healthy. They're eating that. They eat the rice, lots of it. They actually have larger pancreases than we do. So over there, the Asian countries, so they do handle more carbs, but they're putting the kimchi on top. So if he loves kimchi, then if Sean loves kimchi,
well,
then eat it.
And so that people understand, anything that has acetic acid in it, vinegar, fermented foods, they actually slow the rise in blood sugar from a high carbohydrate meal. That's why Bragg's is so popular. Oh, take your shot of Bragg's before you eat each meal, and you start losing weight. It does.
For the vinegar, you mean the apple cider vinegar, Bragg's?
Well, the Bragg's apple cider vinegar. Okay. Acetic acid has been shown in a high carbohydrate meal to slow the rise in blood sugar. Now, I'm not sure if it's because it changes gastric emptying, or because it acts as an insulin mimetic, or it even acts as a glucose disposal agent. But all I know is when you eat rice, if you eat acetic acid with it, whether it be vinegar, kimchi, your own fermented foods, you don't get the same rise in blood sugar as just eating rice. It's magic.
Absolutely. Because I have the genes for diabetes and I'm protected from that. But, kombucha, which is probably the most popular fermented foods, they've so many companies making it, and you go right in the store. So it has the front and the back, like everything does, including us. But so it's very high in acetic acid and yeast, many, many strains of yeast. And when I have told people for years that when you are, I've been criticized for this, when you have yeast, you have candidiasis, your immune system is really struggling to get that yeast under control. Kombucha, foods with yeast, beer, wine, especially those two, and then kombucha, they're not a good thing to take at that time because, you've got this, what's called molecular mimicry, where your immune system sees the yeast, says, oh, I'm trying to get rid of yeast. And then you have, it's just not going to have that same medicinal quality. And some people do fine on kombucha, because we're all unique. So I just want people to be aware of that. Same with sourdough bread, for example. People always fermented their bread, even if they didn't intend to, because wild yeast is floating around in the air. It sees that flour in the water, and it's, gets into the starter, the flour and water, and starts a starter, actually, basically, which they then work into the rest of the flour, and that's where sourdough bread comes from. So it was healthier, but today we don't have good quality wheat. And very few people eat sourdough bread. They just eat bread.
Well, but people who eat sourdough bread don't understand that real sourdough bread has like a 24 to 48 hour fermentation period, and that's what kills the thing, even gluten. It even removes the gluten.
It does,
but most commercial production of sourdough bread is done in like an hour. They only ferment it for an hour, and then they cook it, and it doesn't get rid of anything. Adele Musa did a brilliant blog post on that years ago, that your sourdough bread is not real sourdough bread. So.
Yeah, I mean, we can take our starters, our probiotic liquids, and use them as a starter if you are trying to. I do this sometimes. I'll make, like zucchini bread or muffins or something for my little grandkids, and like he's a muffin freak. But so I'll take all the flour or all the dry ingredients, and I'll put some of our probiotic liquids in there, and then let it sit for 48 hours is great, 24 for sure. Then I add all the other stuff, pour it into the baking pan and bake it. And it's totally, of course, I use our sugar substitute, Be Sweet. And so there's no sugar in it, but you completely digest that zucchini bread or whatever completely differently. So there's all kinds of ways around it. There's a company called Time Travelers Bakery, and if you go online, they will show you their process. They'll even send you a starter, but they show you how to double ferment your bread.
Wow.
And they say that people with gluten intolerance, Tom O'Brien's going to kill me if he hears me say this, but they say that people that have gluten sensitivity don't have any problem because of that double fermentation.
Yeah, so because that's what gets rid of the gluten. It eats that protein. That gluten is a protein. Tom Brady, he wrote a book not too long ago about his diet, and he eats zero anything that is a fungi, whether they're mushrooms or anything like. He eats zero, But more importantly, he doesn't even eat any nightshades, tomatoes. I mean, and the guy is doing great. You can't deny that. Now it could just be him, and it doesn't work for everybody. But I find that fascinating that he won't even eat mushrooms, not even like the good mushroom. Oh, well, these are shiitake. These are good. No, any mushroom he says is bad because it will increase the number of fungi in your body, he claims. That's what he
It's the same idea of the molecular mimicry. If you have yeast already, that diet is exactly like I've been promoting for 30 years. So I'm thrilled when I heard he did that because he looks great. He's aging extremely well. He has a big following. So if he's influencing people, do you think he eats fermented foods? Did you hear about
I don't
that?
know that. I got a
heard he
feeling he
did.
doesn't, but maybe he does. But what I want to know is, and you kind of touched on this before we go to this break. So if I make your fermented vegetables, the carrots, the cabbage, the ginger, and the garlic, and I add Tabasco sauce or cayenne pepper or even some good peppers, red peppers, hot peppers,
Yeah.
make it spicy. That conveys an additional benefit that not spicy does.
Well, it's really like some people can't do spicy and they just can't do it. Like kimchi is very spicy. So it does have the benefit of, parasites hate the spiciness, but it's not necessary at all. And you can always add it afterwards, like wait. So I don't actually know the answer to that, Carl, but if, adding it during the fermentation inhibits some of the microbes, but I do know that all you have to do is put some Tabasco sauce on it when you're going to eat it,
Yeah.
chili oil, whatever you want to put on it. And that's
Right.
fine to do that. That's I'm sure that would be good to do.
So that kills parasites, heat. The
Yeah,
heat.
that's like an Ayurvedic medicine. A lot of cultures protected themselves from parasites.
Mhm.
Of course, the fermented vegetables protect you from parasites. Any eggs or larva that's on the food, and by the way, raw foods. A lot of people are into raw foods, but fermented foods are way healthier because they've killed any E. coli, any parasites. They eat the larva. It's like caviar for them. They love it. So they're protective against parasites. A lot of people are saying now, oh, parasites are good for you. They're not. Your body can tolerate a certain amount. It adapts to
But
having
it doesn't
parasites.
want to. It
No.
doesn't. It's not like it wants that. It wants.
That always makes me crazy when I hear people say, "Oh, parasites are good."
Yeah, good for you. You can have mine too. Randy Roach came on my show in 2006, and we talked about eating raw food. He was a follower of Agenus Vonderplanitz.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so
raw meat.
Yeah, and so Randy used to eat raw chicken. He did, and he ate it for years. I mean, he may still eat it. I haven't spoken to him lately, but he lives in Canada. But one of the things that Randy came on to my show and said, like, if you want to try raw chicken, there's a safe way to do it, and it's basically like making ceviche. You take vinegar, you take the spices, you take the cilantro, and you let it soak and cure. You let it cure. So it doesn't cook. It's still raw, but it has this, it goes from being that disgusting feeling raw chicken to like little pieces of hard chicken. And it's really, you think you're eating fish. You think you're eating a ceviche. But I had people listen to that show and start making that chicken ceviche, and they loved it. They thought it was fantastic.
That's a smart idea to do that, because now you've got the vinegar. It's got this little gnat flying around in front of my face, but it's kind of cooking it in a sense. It's got that acetic alcohol, the acetic bacteria.
Yeah.
But I do want to tell you this. I'm not an advocate of that because, I lived in LA for about 8 years, and there's an incredible colon therapist out there, and he has amazing pictures of parasites and everything. But because it was a real hot thing for a while out in LA, a lot of people were doing colonics with him, and he said that the nastiest, most toxic stool that he saw during the colonics were from the raw food people, and he said the odor was horrible and everything. So it's really not ideal to do that. But again, it can ferment. You can ferment sausage and so on. So anyway, just I would never.
The way I
try that.
understand it.
Oh, but it's different with beef. You know, the people that use beef tartare, it's not in the same category, I don't think, as chicken. But that's a great idea to put this.
The way it
fish
was
or-
explained to me is that raw meats ferment in the lower colon, and that's why they stink and they make you gassy.
Mhm. And they produce ammonia, which is a brain toxin. Now, that's another thing that the fermented vegetables are going to do. They're going to remove that ammonia, which is a big problem for people.
Yeah, it's actually a byproduct of a high protein diet. We're going to take our last commercial break. When we come back, I want to go backwards for a second. So I don't think people realize that you're the OG of the whole gut microbiome thing before there was even a word for microbiome. I want to go revisit that for a second, okay?
Right.
We're going to be right back with more. Stay tuned. You're watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. Are you suffering from signs of an unhappy gut? Diversity is the key to healthy, robust inner ecosystem. Body Ecology probiotic liquids are made by fermenting organic seeds, biodynamic brown rice, and chickpeas together to create a diverse culture found nowhere else on Earth. It's the secret to restoring your gut's microbiome for a healthier digestive tract, improved immune function, and longevity. Take 20% off by visiting the website shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco. shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco. That's BODYECO. And using the code SHR20. There are lots of concerns about food supply today. That's why you need White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures will deliver food right to your doorstep. You don't even have to go out and be disappointed by shopping in grocery stores. The finest beef, pork, lamb, duck, and more can be found at White Oak Pastures. And now they even have seafood. And best of all, White Oak Pastures has a negative carbon footprint, which means that you don't have to feel guilty for eating your ribeye. Go to shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 15% off. GHKCU is one of the most effective peptides for rebuilding more youthful skin, reversing skin damage, diminishing wrinkles, and tightening loose skin. I personally use Restoracell with GHKCU every day. It's making an undeniable difference in the quality of my skin. Restoracell is fantastic for all types of skin. Now you can order Restoracell and save 25% when you use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. While you may be diligent in your workouts and your diet, don't neglect what people see first and foremost, and that's your skin. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use code SHR25 today. P3OM from Bioptimizers is a patented prebiotic and probiotic supplement with Lactobacillus plantarum OM. It has now been upgraded to P3OM 2.0 with the addition of a superfood formulation that makes it 2 times stronger, as well as optimizes L. plantarum's strength. So it's more powerful than ever, which means that not only will it help you completely digest all animal proteins, it also reduces cortisol, causes deep relaxation and better sleep, and reduces stress. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3-OM today and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. Donna, before we get into your history, is this a mistake to focus on these single strain microbes, these probiotics that just do one? This is it. Like right now, Akkermansia is all the rage. Mm-hmm. I actually know the doctor who first talked about Akkermansia about 8 years ago, maybe 9, at an A4M convention in Las Vegas. His name is Dr. Matt Andrew. He's my personal physician. Back then, he talked about Akkermansia because it increased Akkermansia in the gut when you're on metformin. And so they were trying to make an argument for that, and I'm sure
But it's
berberine.
a mucus eater.
It is, okay, so talk about it. And is it a mistake to just focus on just one strain of a probiotic?
I really believe, from what I've been able to tell, that if you take that single strain or a group of them together, 5, 6, whatever, and you take it with the fermented foods, they help escort this more fragile kind of bacteria down into the gut. And then they're in the stool. Some will colonize. They'll definitely do their job if there are enough of them. But it does take time for them to work, where your fermented vegetables and the probiotic liquids, they're so hardy, they begin working in days. So you have to be patient, I think. But the lactobacillus, for example, the vegetables are very skewed toward lactobacillus. And so other microbes like bifidus in particular, I think you really should add those in, and they're very compatible. So the lactobacillus will help the bifidus survive because they want them there living beside them. They'll produce substances so that the bifidus can survive. So I think it's fine to do that, but you should take them. Don't expect them to work right away. And then also because there's not much of them, and they're in this gut, this long 5-foot colon, for example. They've got to go through the small intestine. I do them. I mean, I take Akkermansia, I take lots of bifidus, and that drink I was telling you about, I make in the morning with the whey protein and the colostrum and the human milk sugars, and I put lots of bifidus in there too. And I mean, that was a fantastic thing for me to do. I'm feeding them, it's empty stomach, so they're going right down on into the gut, and it works so well to do something like that. So I think we just need more understanding of how to use them
and how to get them where you want them to be. So let's talk about you. When did you start this journey, and why did you start in this journey?
Well, I started it because I was this kid that took antibiotics for my skin, and took them for a long time because I was told I could, and totally screwed up my gut. I mean, to eat was a very painful experience. And so I went on a quest. I tried everything out there: mega vitamins, raw foods, macrobiotics for 8 years. I tried everything, and everything helped me learn something. But it was when I met Dr. Crook, who'd written The Yeast Connection, and sat down and had a great conversation with him, who eventually actually promoted my diet for yeast. That's when I realized that was what was wrong with me. Those antibiotics had caused systemic yeast infection and a gut infection. And so then I tried his diet. It wasn't doing 100%, just a step in the right direction. And then I just kind of put it out to the universe, like, what now? Where do I go? What do I do next? And it's amazing when I look back, because these answers came to me. I would find research, or like, for example, there are lots of microbiologists out there talking about these bacteria. They knew a whole lot about them, about yeast and so on, but they were only reporting in their journals to each other, and they never told us. And I try to remember sometime, how was it that I began to understand that there's this world in our gut of microbes, because that information didn't exist yet. I actually remember sitting at the kitchen table one night thinking, what do I call this world? There's no such term, and came up with inner ecosystem, because people were real into the environment's ecosystem. Are we going to kill our water, kill the birds and the insects, and the species are disappearing? We have this ecosystem. And I thought, do we have an ecosystem too? And that's when I began to find this. Then, fermented foods like kefir was the first thing that came to me. Milk kefir. I learned about the history behind that. It came in, found in Turkish. It was considered the food of Noah's Ark. That's how we survived the flooding of the earth 6,000 years ago. And I started with that. And then I realized people can't take milk, some people with gut problems. So I invented the taking coconut water, and invented young coconut kefir. That was amazing, because around that time I started working with kids with autism. It was like magical for getting them turned back around on the diet too, because it's addressing yeast. And it just all started coming together. And I look back and I think that definitely, I always say this, that there was a hand of God over all of that happening because I was asking, and I think if we ask, we do get answers. And I also think that I genuinely, truly wanted to know to help other people. And there was the knowledge, there was the information. So I was really able to pull it all together and introduce it. So my first book, the Body Culture Diet book, talked all about this inner world, talked about the silent spring and how we were killing it. Because Rachel Carson had written a book called The Silent Spring. So there's a chapter in my book about how we won't have any birds soon. We keep poisoning our environment. And I realized that was true for us too. It was a good 12 years or so before microbiologists started looking at this gut world. And I remember the first thing was like a Psychology Today or one of those magazines had a cover saying bacteria in the gut might have, there's this world in our gut and it might have an influence on our depression and our emotions, our mental well-being. And that was, then all of a sudden it started slowly, a few other covers had it, and then it started taking off. But I'd already been out there for years, coming around to health food stores and giving talks and teaching my moms about the importance of this inner ecosystem, because just as we talked about earlier, you know, they had, I'm not sure if I can say this, damage, let's say, from eating wrong, having yeast, taking some things they shouldn't have been taking. So many children. We had 2,000 families at one point, and many of those kids recovered. Happened very quickly.
Now, if someone has yeast, they suspect. Let's say they go, you know, I have yeast. Obviously, sugar has to be removed from the diet, right? Because sugar. But is it safe to use, like, what's that stuff, Nyostat or
Nystatin? Yeah.
Nyostat?
Well,
Safe to use those things?
the doctors who treated the kids, all the kids in my group always had their own doctors who many of them had their own kids with autism, and they really loved Body Ecology, but they couldn't promote Body Ecology because we have products and they didn't want to promote products. But oh gosh, Carl, nystatin. They use nystatin. Yeah, they use nystatin, and it is, if a kid has a really bad yeast infection, it can suppress that infection and bring down a lot of their symptoms, but you can't stop there. That's just, when they go off of it, they'll get a reoccurrence of the yeast. So you've got to.
What do you do once you use nystatin for that first attack? What do you do? Is it diet?
You must do the diet. You have to be. So Body Ecology was really the first paleo diet. I wish I'd termed it that, because it's a good marketing term, but it was sugar-free, including back at those days, people were really into juices like beets and carrots and all these sweet juices. So they started drinking coconut water, which is extremely sweet. That was big in the raw community. So I said, you can't drink all that sugar. Let's ferment it. That worked well. It was just really a matter of educating people on a low sugar, protein and vegetables, and certain fermented foods. And that did the trick. That turned these kids around.
I think more people have fungi and fungus problems in their body than.
When
you look at the rate of people who have like fungal nail disorder, where their nails are all, that's an extension of what's going on inside your body.
Absolutely. And if you go to, say, Great Plains, they have what's called an organic acid test. I've seen so many of those, as every practitioner has that orders that test. They all have a high marker of something called arabinose. That's an indication of yeast. It's like so normal, so common, and it's a pathogenic. It's not good. It's not like healthy yeast. We do have beneficial yeast. The yeast Saccharomyces boulardii is a very beneficial one. It will kill candida, so that would be a good supplement to take. And then the yeast that you'll find in kefir is a beneficial yeast too. So we have good ones and we have bad. Everything has good and bad to it. So yeah, that's kefir. The reason kefir is unique is that it's fermented, and it's the only fermented dairy product with yeast in it. And you want the good yeast in your gut too. At least 5% of your gut is healthy yeast. And interestingly enough, those yeast do need carbohydrates, like, complex carbs, to grow. That's their food. But in the beginning, you're trying to starve them. So you can't have that in the beginning.
So, and people can also make kefir using your starter grains. You have the starter grains on your website. Also.
Yeah, so that's a good point you just made. I use the word grains. Initially, for thousands of years, people had grains and they protected them really carefully. If they had to like travel across the desert or something, they dehydrated them, wrapped them up, and took them where they were going. But then I was using grains in the beginning and fermenting goat's milk, giving it to people with cancer with amazing results, by the way. I know you have a show on that. And fermented vegetables are fantastic for people with cancer. Lots of good research on that.
Mhm.
So anyway, so they had the grains, but I started using grains and telling people about them. And then I started going around to health food stores, like up in Seattle, for example, and people would bring, and I was talking about kefir, so people would bring these big, gigantic jars of the kefir that they fermented, and it was horrible. Like it had bubbly, green, yucky stuff on the top and pink and green stripes around the side. And I thought, uh-oh, I'm going to get sued or the FDA is going to come after me or something, but I want people to have this. So that's where I started researching and found a company in Germany that taught me all about starters. And we found an ancient one, like that's what we have now. It's a very ancient microbes. But the good thing about the starter, two good things. First of all, you're making them fresh you can take some of batch number 1 and put it in batch number 2 and keep fermenting for about 5, 6, 7 times. But then the yeast are so fragile that they will disappear and the other bacteria start to take over. So it's not really kefir anymore. So it's better to start over again. But definitely economical. Like if you have a daycare center and you need a gallon of milk, you can just put in a whole cup of previous starter and make this great kefir for kids. Anyway, so I just learned how important a starter was and it was safe. In other words, I wasn't going to get sued, but also that's the problem is you transfer those grains from one batch of milk to the next batch, just to rinse them off, put them in a new fresh batch. They do become contaminated, and there's quite a lot of research on that.
It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So can I use your starter kit in conventionally sold milk, or does it have to be raw milk?
Oh, no. Because that's what I was saying. I would steer you to the A2 milk because it's the best.
Yeah, I know, A2 casein, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so then it's pasteurized, of course, unless you can get it from the farmer directly or the farmer's market. Then just put the starter in there, and all you do is put the starter in and then warm the milk, put in the starter, put it in a glass jar, ball jar, and put it out on the counter with the towel wrapped around it for 16 hours or so, and check it, shake it up and put it in the refrigerator. It's ready to go. Now, honestly, I think a lot of people who have problems with dairy, I know this for a fact because we had moms who wanted their kids to have some dairy, some milk. If you will take 1 tablespoon of that or a little bit and dilute it with water and just take it like a probiotic, before you know it, not before you know it, but like as the couple weeks go by, you've now trained the microbes in your gut to understand what dairy is and how to digest it. And then, you can slowly increase it to where you finally have a quarter of a cup. But the good thing about the kefir is it stays in the refrigerator for weeks. And so you can do that. You can just have a little bit at a time while you're training your gut microbes, because they're going to digest what you tell them to digest, what you teach them to digest. So I've got many people back, including myself. I was super sensitive to dairy, but I'm fine with it now, especially the whey protein drink I was telling you about,
Right.
Which again is also putting in bacteria that love dairy, training the rest of my microbes. So then I can start. And here's another interesting thing that I've just recently learned is that a lot of people are on the FODMAP diet. They have issues with SIBO. That's a good thing to do in the beginning, not forever, but it's definitely going to bring that gas and bloating down. Well, this is going to surprise a lot of people, but you can buy lactose-free kefir, and it's legal it's a legal FODMAP food. So,
isn't that just a function of letting the kefir ferment longer because it eats all the lactose, right?
Yeah, but sometimes there's still some remaining for super sensitive people. So what I did when A2, for example, A2 came out with a brand new half and half. Some people like to make yogurt or kefir with a little more fat in it. You know, they're fat lover people.
Mhm.
And they will, so what I do is I take the drops you can actually purchase. Seeking Health has them, other people have them, lactose drops. And you put in about, I put in more than they say, but I'll put in like,
Lactose or lactase drops?
yeah, the drops are, good point.
Yeah.
Lactase drops, so they're going to digest the milk sugar. And I put it in that carton, and I use a good amount, like, 20 drops or something. And then I'll put it in the refrigerator for 2 days, 28 hours at least, maybe longer if you want. And then, it's gotten rid of the lactose, those drops. So that makes people that are really avoiding it right now, they maybe don't need to anymore.
Right. That's brilliant. I didn't know about that.
I just learned it too.
I want to put this up one more time. So those of you who are listening or watching, go to shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco. Use the code SHR20 to get 20% off everything at the website. Look at the starter kits for both your own fermented foods and even making your own kefir. That's valuable. Like this is going back to when we understood that food was medicine. That's what this harkens back to. And browse around the website, check it out. This is not flash in the pan stuff. Donna has been doing this for decades, and she led the charge, as she said, before there was even a word microbiome. She came up with the inner ecosystem. She understood it. She knew what it was. She just didn't have the same name that we have today. But she's been burning this torch for a very long time, and she deserves your attention, and she deserves your dollars. This is good stuff. Your family will benefit from it. Your kids won't get sick all year long when everybody else does. So check it out. shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco and use the code SHR20.
I have a great story about teachers. They were in the school where the kids were, they had health problems and maybe like autism or something, but they were always sick. The teachers were always sick. And then they started making and drinking goat kefir, and the entire year went by and nobody got sick. So they're getting sick from the kids who didn't have good immune systems. But that's something I learned early on too. So it's just, I think we should in Russia, they actually give free kefir to the mothers while they're pregnant. And kids go to school and get a glass of kefir every morning. And the Russians have pretty strong immune systems. We should be sending our kids out the door they can do the tasty pastry.
Yeah.
It would be nice if our schools, daycare centers, and all offered these kids something nourishing like that. I have another story if we have time. My son was in middle school, and I approached the teacher. She's like a home ec teacher. And I said, I'd be happy to talk to the kids about healthy food. And so I taught him about stevia. They loved that. Made lemonade. But then I brought in kefir and showed him how to make that. And they just thought it was disgusting. They went, "Ew, this is gross." But Helios Nutrition, who was in a company that was available at that time, they've been bought out by Lifeway, but they sent a ton of kefir to support me. So the kids, when they went out the door, we handed them a bottle of kefir. And then she had 5 classes that day, and she had so much kefir, she gave it to them every day. And it was so interesting because the next time I came back to teach another class, the principal called me into her office. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble here. And she sat me down and she said to me, all over the school, the teachers are talking about how calm the kids are. But first of all, they usually come to school starving to death. And here was this calming, nurturing food. This one kid went out the door and he said to me, my stepmom is on antidepressants. My mom's got this problem. He said, do you think this would help me? And that's when I said, yeah, take this bottle of kefir and start drinking it. He even gave them a $5 coupon so they could go in the store. But that was a great experience. Everybody was talking about the change in the kids.
Very cool. Very, very cool. It's always fun to have you on because we go in so many different directions and we cover so much information.
And you know so much. I love being on. I just love being with a host that knows so much. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here today. Again, it's shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco and use the code SHR20 to save 20% off. We'll see you soon. And that's it for today. I don't think I have a show tomorrow. But we have a bunch of good shows next week. One of them on a peptide, I believe. So tune in then. Don't forget, share the show. You never know. You could share this show, and one person could start making fermented foods from Body Ecology and say, oh my God, I feel so much better. I don't get bloated anymore. And you help somebody by what? Passively just passing a show along. So share the show whenever possible, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.